digital world? Welcome back. It's time for another fantastic top 10 on Spliced In Later countdown time. I'm excited to be bringing this one to you, and we're going to jump right into it because it's a big one. As I've been doing other top 10s, this one was one of the ones I wanted to do first, but as I've looked into it more and more, it's complicated. It's required a lot of thought. This list has changed radically every couple of weeks. Movies have shifted from 4 to 8, from 10 to 2, in some cases off the list to on the list to off the list again. So it's very exciting. And finally, I think I've got it, because if I think about it for too much longer, it's probably all going to change again. And this is the version of the list that I'm most comfortable with. So it's the one I'm going to bring to you today, a week before the exciting 50th episode of Spliced In Later. Normally you'd save something like this for a 50th episode, but I've got a good idea for what I want to do next week. So we're going to do it on the lovely number of episode 49. A couple of parameters before we begin. First off, I know I say this a few times where I go, oh, I'm sick, so I apologize if I cough or sound terrible. I'm also a wimp, so a lot of the times where I said I've been sick, I haven't been that bad. I'm genuinely sick this go around. I've got a lurgy. Do not worry, listeners out there, I do not have the thing that's currently going around, but I'm not great. So apologies if my voice does give out, if it seems like there's some abrupt cuts, probably because I've had to cut out some coughing or some sneezing or whatever, but at least I'm safely in my home. I may not have the bad thing, but I'm still self-isolating, social distancing, so we can all stay alive together. Because it's not fun being sick in any capacity, let alone the bad one, the big one. And furthermore, this is my list. And let me tell you, this is the list that I'm confident is going to enrage people, make people angry, make people annoyed. Because what comes down to what I think are my favorite movies and what the general public consensus of the best movies are, I think are radically different. There's going to be some bits where everybody agrees, but there are going to be movies on here where I'm going to say I think they're the best, and there are people out there who absolutely are going to go, you are talking out of your ass. You do not understand these movies. You have made a terrible mistake. We'll never listen to you again. It's to be expected with this one, I think, but just keep in mind that this is just my list. This is the movies that I've sat down and gone, I want to watch that movie because it is my favorite. I get told a lot of people that this is the best movie, and I can agree it's a good movie, but it's all about rewatchability. It's about what gives me joy when I watch it. And just because a movie that the whole world agrees is the best of these type of movies, maybe I like a movie just a little bit more. So, apologies in advance for the strong emotions that I feel a lot of you are going to have. But just remember, you've got your own lists. You can make your own. You can tell me what your favorite movies are from this category. And I guarantee you, I will not get angry. I will listen happily because boy, I love people talking about their favorite things. Doesn't matter if it's not my favorite. I just enjoy hearing it. So what is it? What are we talking about? Well, in most cases, as I've said before, if you've clicked on the link in YouTube, if you've clicked on the link in Spotify, you know what it is. But we are doing the top 10 Disney movies. And when I say the top 10 Disney movies, I mean the top 10 Disney animated movies. And even then, that requires some more restrictions because there are a lot of animated Disney movies out there. Direct-to-video, theatrical releases, sequels, prequels, sidequels. There's so much out there. There's a lot of content. And most of it is very good. If you ever want to spend a day just watching Disney animated films, it will not be a day wasted, that's for sure. But for this list specifically, to narrow it down to a manageable level, I've looked on the official Disney Animated Classic Index, which, simply put, are movies that Disney have said are part of a series of movies that's part of their Disney Classic lineup. Starting with number 1, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which came out in the late 1930s, and most recently ending with Frozen 2, which came out last year. There are a lot of movies on this list. There are over 50. Tangled was the 50th movie in this list, but it's specifically the movies that went straight to the cinema that are brand new ideas. Only recently have sequels been added to this lineup, and I think it's only been Frozen 2 and Ralph Breaks the Internet. So Tarzan is a part of this lineup, but Tarzan 2, the direct-to-DVD sequel, is not. The Jungle Book is part of this lineup. The Jungle Book 2, which did get a theatrical release, is still not considered a part of this lineup. If you ever want further classification when you're looking for these movies, most posters now have a little Disney classic at the top of the poster, and it will give you a number, and it will tell you what number line in this is. So it's using this classification, this list of movies, that I am giving the top 10 Disney films, the Disney animated classics. And there's some good movies on here. Even limiting myself down to that has not helped at all. It has been an uphill battle to really zero in on this list, but I'm ready to do it. Finally, because there's a lot of movies to talk about and I tend to rabbit on, as I've just been doing right now. This was supposed to be a quick intro. I will try and just say what the movie is. I'll give you a brief recap and I'll try and say briefly why I like it. That said, I'll probably get distracted. There will be movies that I'll talk about longer than the others, specifically the movies at the start of the list, because I feel like I've got more time. And by the end of the list, when we're nearing an hour recording time, I'll start going, I like this movie because it was good. Next. So it's going to be wild. It's going to be all over the place. But it should be an exciting listen. And for all you Disney fans out there, which I'm sure there are quite a few, I know specific listeners of mine worship the very ground that Disney walks on. This should be a good episode for you. Coming in at number 10, I have picked The Emperor's New Groove. That's right, I said at the start, it doesn't matter if there's specific consensus that these particular Disney movies are good. I'm going to pick the ones that I like the most. And The Emperor's New Groove is solidly holding on to that number 10 spot. Boy, do I love this movie. Give you a little recap. The Emperor's New Groove tells the story of Kuzco, who is an emperor, and he's a dickhead. He's an absolutely terrible person. He mistreats the people under him. He's selfish. He's arrogant. He's quite happy to demolish villages to build a spa for his own personal enjoyment. He wrongs so many people, specifically the villain of our story, Yzma, who is his advisor. She tries to kill him, but accidentally, instead of poisoning him, turns him into a llama. She then also wants him further dead by sending her henchman Kronk to kill him, but Kronk is a lovable goof, so ends up just letting Kuzco float away on the back of a cart pulled by a lovely peasant man called Pacha. Pacha eventually discovers Kuzco, and what transpires is a journey to get back to the kingdom because Kuzco doesn't want to be a llama anymore. Pacha will help him, provided Pacha sees some progression in him, that he wants to be a better person, and Kuzco is determined not to do that. Meanwhile, Yzma realizes that Kuzco is still alive, and she engages in a chase. And that's essentially what this movie is. It's traveling from point A to point B, double backing, evading one another. Why do I love this movie so much? It's because it's very funny. It is the characters in this movie that I love so much because they are so funny and they always make me laugh every time I watch them. Kuzco is an arrogant little shit. He's terrible. Even when he's trying to be a better person, he's still got this selfish underneath him that he just cannot shake. In contrast to Pacha, who is helping him, who is the nicest, kindest person in the whole world. And it's this oddball coupling. As I've said in the past, what I love about buddy cop films and odd pairing movies, I love when two people who are so different are forced into a situation where they have to help each other. And that's how this movie goes. It's sweet when it needs to be. It's happy when it needs to be. There's the verbal sparring between the two of them. They go through all sorts of craziness to get back to the Emperor's throne, essentially, evading wild animals, breaking bridges, and basically themselves, because they keep double-crossing each other, trying to one-up the other. Makes for hilarious viewing. Furthermore, our villain Yzma and her sidekick Kronk are ridiculously funny, and it's very Deadpool-y funny the way they operate. They break the fourth wall quite often, and I love stuff like that. If it makes it work well into the movie, that's great. They've got so many great one-liners in here. Yzma's pull the lever. Kronk trying to figure out how they were able to beat Kuzco to a certain place by literally pulling down a map and asking the audience how they did it. He's got his own shoulder angel and devil, which he has arguments with constantly. He ends up being a chef at one point. It's just very fun, simple viewing. You can put on The Emperor's New Groove. It is not a long movie, but you are guaranteed, even if you know all the jokes, that you're going to have a laugh. And you will, of course, learn for the kiddies not to be a selfish brat. But overall, as much as all the other Disneys are classics and they can say they've stood the test of time or whatever, often, if I have the choice, I will put on The Emperor's New Groove because of its rewatchability. It has to be my number 10, The Emperor's New Groove. Coming in at number 9, I'm not sure about this one. I love it, and I thought more people loved it, but maybe they don't. I'm not sure. Again, it's not your classic standard Disney film. It is Lilo and Stitch. Lilo and Stitch is held very close to my heart because of its enjoyment that I had watching it as a kid. Boy, did I love this movie, and boy, did I love rewatching it over and over again. Lilo and Stitch, combining Disney lessons with space adventure and monsters and everything. Hawaii as well. Stitch starts off the movie as Experiment 626. He's been created by Dr. Jumba to be the ultimate killing machine. He's got no heart, no soul. All he'll do is destroy everything he touches. The Galactic Council goes, well, you can't have that. We've got to destroy it. But Experiment 626 manages to escape because he is an unstoppable killing machine and lands on Earth in Hawaii, where he encounters a little girl called Lilo. Lilo is an outcast. She has no friends. She's from a broken family. Her sister is essentially her mother because their parents are out of the picture. Lilo thinks that Experiment 626 is a dog, so she adopts him and wants him to be her friend, and she names him Stitch. And let me tell you, Stitch is having absolutely none of it. The more Lilo tries to make him her friend, the more he pulls away and ruins the lives of everyone around him. But somehow these two do manage to form a little bond, and Stitch, as a terrible, horrible creature, starts to grow, starts to have connections, starts to grow a conscience. A lot of what I just mentioned for The Emperor's New Groove, but up for 100, because while Cusco is a dickhead, Stitch is a blank slate. He does not know what he's doing is wrong, but he has no concept of how to be better. And it is watching Lilo teach him to be better, while also feeling bad for this poor little girl, who there is nothing wrong with her at all, yet she can't seem to make any of her own friends as well. As with The Emperor's New Groove, Lilo and Stitch has a ton of supporting characters who I'd love for their comedy. Stitch is being hunted by Dr. Jumba and his sidekick Pleakley, and their attempts to blend into Hawaii and capture Stitch are just fun to watch. What's important here for me, and why I love it and why it's staying on my top 10, is that I love Stitch. I loved Stitch as a kid. I love Stitch's voice. I love Stitch's mannerisms, and he still is held so close to my heart, even now as I rapidly approach my 30s. Stitch is psychotic, but when he's feeling blue, I instantly connect with him in the same way that I instantly connect with Lilo. I think a lot of people who have trouble making friends, who feel outcast, who feel alone, which is most people in the world, we all have these moments every now and then, can really relate to this desire just to have somebody who accepts you for who you are. And it works both ways here. Stitch kind of accepts Lilo because he doesn't think much about it, whereas Lilo accepts Stitch even when he's being horrifyingly evil. Watching Stitch become a better character, watching Stitch learn to be able to speak, and then his adorableness where he makes a little speech about family and Ohana and all that, gets me every time, breaks me down, always a sobbing mess. Great action in here, great excitement, good visuals, good animation. I love Hawaii, I love Hawaiian music. Lilo and Stitch, I will remember till the day I die, I think. It reminds me of how good it was to be a child, and I can't not rewatch Lilo and Stitch and suffer all sorts of emotions. So it's got to be on my list. Lilo and Stitch, number 9. Coming in at number 8, this might surprise the friends I have that are listening to this episode, how low it is on the list, but it's still got to be on the top 10. If you're on the top 10, it means you're awesome. Just maybe you might be shocked that I find other movies a bit more enjoyable than this. Number 8 is Beauty and the Beast. Now, I think you'd be living under a rock to not know the premise of Beauty and the Beast, because we have also just had the live action movie that came out not too many years ago. But to break it down for you, Beauty and the Beast stars Belle, who is a strange girl in a boring town. Everyone thinks she's kooky because she reads books, whatever. Her father is the crazy inventor, ends up going to the wrong place, to this cursed castle where all the inhabitants have been turned into furniture, and I think he's a prince, or just the lord of the castle or whatever, has been turned into a terrible beast by a goddess, a fairy, an enchantress, a sorcerer, whatever you want to call her. She didn't like the way he talked to her because he was a brute and a selfish ass, so she turned him into a beast, and they've been cursed to live there like that forever. Belle makes a deal that if Beast lets her father go, she will stay with him, which to this day I see a lot of articles about the whole Stockholm Syndrome thing, because of course Belle and the Beast grow fond of each other while they're locked up and romance ensues, which is good because the Beast needs somebody to fall in love with him to break the curse. Now, putting aside that thing, because I can't argue with that sort of view of the movie, I really like it as a prime example of a good Disney musical, a musical where there's all sorts of songs sung by the heroes and the villains, all sorts of crazy characters, romance abounds in a lot of Disney films, and I love them when they're done correctly. And, you know, depending how you feel about Belle and Beast's relationship in this day and age, for me, I don't have a problem with it specifically. I don't want to think about it too much, because with a lot of old Disney films, if you think too much about the rights and wrongs of it, you're going to unravel a lot of plots. I really like the songs in this movie. I really like the furniture creatures, Cogsworth, Lumiere, Mrs. Potts. They're all vibrant, fun characters. But, and this might be bad, my favorite character in here is the villain, Gaston, because he's such a pig. He's a terrible, terrible person, but he's so confident about it that he's enjoyable to watch as a villain. I always maintain that villains are probably more interesting than heroes because, let's face it, we all enjoy someone being a prick. We all enjoy fantasizing what it would be like to just be terrible people, chewing the scenery, outlandish plans. In Gaston's case, he just thinks he walks on water, and it really emphasizes his character and the way he sings. Especially there's a song in here about him, Gaston, which I know all the words to. And even later on when he's rallying the townspeople to kill the Beast with the mob song, it's horrifying, it's terrible, you don't want the Beast to die, but it's a powerful song that really stands true to what we've seen of Gaston as a person, as a villain. It's not higher on my list because I didn't watch it too much as a kid, because I came from that family that sort of avoided watching princess movies. I don't know why. They were never offered to me as a kid. I certainly would not have not watched them if I had access to them, because I just watched everything I could get my hands on. But a lot of princess movies were not available to me. And it was only when I started going up through high school and doing a music class at school where we were doing the Disney musicals to analyze them. Beauty and the Beast was first off the rank, and I went, okay, cool, it's that movie about the woman who falls in love with the Beast. But watching it, it is a perfect act, musical, great songs, great action, great romance. I mean, who doesn't love the Beauty and the Beast song sung by Angela Lansbury? It's just sweet and lovely. I also really liked the remake. I don't know how other people did. It made a lot of money at the box office, but all I hear these days are complaints about the remakes. I personally don't mind the remakes. I think they're fine. They're giving us what we want, which is essentially just the movie again. But hands down, the animated movie is 10 times better than the live action most of the time, in my opinion. Beauty and the Beast, great stuff, great songs, great love, great Gaston. Very good. Number 8. Coming in at number 7, Hercules. And I'm not doing the Nutty Professor thing, that was just accidental. Came out in 1997. Hercules, cherished from my youth, absolutely. If you're not familiar with the plot, Hercules is the son of Zeus and Hera. Hades doesn't like Hercules, wants him killed because he believes Hercules is going to stop him from taking over Mount Olympus. Hercules manages to escape, but ends up on Earth where he's turned mortal. Eventually he learns his origins, and in order to return to Mount Olympus, he has to become a true hero. So he teams up with his flying horse Pegasus and the lovely, wonderful Danny DeVito as his hero trainer, Phil. And he goes off on a quest to show the world that he's a true hero. It's hard to really narrow down exactly what it is about Hercules that really rings home true for me, but I think it's the symbolism of Mount Olympus and the gods. I'm very interested in the Greek gods and that sort of thing. Zeus, Hades, Poseidon. I've been really into that from when I was growing up. And Hercules really helped me learn about it, essentially. Maybe in an exaggerated sense. Let's be fair, Hercules isn't exactly accurate. But to be fair, what is accurate about the Greek gods exactly? We don't know. Was there a Zeus? Who cares? Doesn't matter. It's a good, enjoying plot. Hercules is a great protagonist. He, on the outside, is super strong. Nothing can beat him. But on the inside, he is insecure. He is meek. He's terrible around women. He doesn't know how to talk to normal people. He falls over his own feet. Absolutely relatable character. His mentor, Phil, is just pure Danny DeVito. Danny DeVito being Danny DeVito as he is in most things. And James Woods just hams up the scenery as Hades. Imagine if Hades was James Woods, because that's what we got. I don't even know if James Woods was playing Hades, but he was certainly being himself. And his mannerisms, the way he'd go, okay, all right, okay, when he'd be really cool for a second and then just explode in a fiery rage, was absolutely incredible. I enjoyed the Titans in here. I enjoyed the love interest, Meg. Pain and Panic, the henchman for Hades, just constantly in pain or panic. Ha 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 ha. But it also really possibly started my love for heroes as well, which of course has evolved into the Marvel superheroes and everything. I love seeing heroes take on supervillains, overcome the odds, go the distance. There's a song in here called Go the Distance. But Hercules is great, totally be watchable. Love it to pieces. Number 7. Coming in at number 6, another 1990s Disney classic, Aladdin. Now, I don't love Aladdin as much as other people do. That's why it's further down on my list, which is why I don't care too much about the live action film. I know if you're a true fan of Aladdin, you probably hate it, and that's totally okay to do that. I don't mind the live action film, but I will of course say once again that it is nothing compared to the animated classic. Aladdin is about the street rat, Aladdin, the homeless, living on the streets of Agrabah, trodden on, wants to make something of his life, but he's got nowhere with it. Gets manipulated by Jafar, the royal vizier to the Sultan, who wants to become the Sultan, and through a series of events, he gets a hold of a magic lamp, which contains a genie, voiced to absolute perfection by Robin Williams. Leads to the story of Aladdin using his 3 wishes to impress the Princess Jasmine, who he has fallen in love with, while Jafar tries to find out exactly who this guy is, how to get his hands on the genie, how to use it for his own ends. Aladdin is great. It is fun to watch. He's got great songs. Aladdin is a great protagonist. I love his monkey sidekick, Abu. Jafar is a great evil villain with his sidekick, Iago, voiced by Gilbert Gottfried, who I don't know if he's a real person or not. I've seen movies, live action movies of him, and his voice is exactly the way it is when he's voicing Iago. It's very strange, but good for him, good for him. But why do I love this movie? Well, it's Robin Williams. Robin Williams has the genie. I love Robin Williams with all my heart. One day I'm going to do a tribute to Robin Williams, as I'm planning to do a tribute to most actors and comedians. Robin Williams essentially puts all his mannerisms of his spontaneousness, his improvisational skills, his ability to mimic other actors and characters into the genie. And he makes him such a vibrant character that when he's not on screen, you miss him completely. I really love his Friend Like Me song, his Prince Ali song, the way he uses Aladdin's wishes to get him what he wants, while also just yearning to be free. Because as we all know, I guess maybe we know, genies are imprisoned to the lamp and have to fulfill the 3 wishes. And hopefully one day he will be free to see the world. Aladdin was released on the year I was born. So it is as old as I am, which is Aladdin's getting on in its days, but it is fantastic to watch. I think the first sign of the golden age of Disney of the 1990s. I think there might have been a movie that came out before it, but Aladdin really set the standard for which other 1990s movies had to aim for, I should say. And looking at my list as we're going forward, there's only other 2 movies, two movies from the 1990s that are on this list that are higher than Aladdin. So Aladdin was absolutely entertaining, great to watch, great character, great genie, great villains, great songs. Agrabah is an incredible place. Aladdin, love it. Number 6. Coming in at number 5, again, this is my list, Tarzan. Tarzan came out in 1999, 2000 technically, and I love Tarzan. Tarzan, I hear, gets a bit of a bad rap. I disagree wholeheartedly. Tarzan is absolutely magic to watch, great animation, great story. I don't know, it's hard to explain these movies because I feel like a lot of people know the plots, but if you don't know, Tarzan is a young boy that ends up being adopted by gorillas and raised by gorillas. So he's essentially a gorilla man. And he's got his friends who are gorillas or an elephant, living his life in the jungle, doesn't really care about anything in the world, just he's happy where he is. But then he meets some humans, specifically Jane, who is his love interest of the movie, and Clayton, the Brian Blessed voiced crazy person, our antagonist for the film. I really like the story of Tarzan. I really like how he is torn between his family with the gorillas, but also his desire to be with people of his own kind. The animals are brought to life with great voice acting, and the human aspect as well, I think, is really interesting. But it's Phil Collins that makes this movie for me. The songs in here are all sung by Phil Collins, and as a kid, I fell in love with every single one of these songs. I don't know if it's specifically Phil Collins' voice or the way he sings his songs, because he certainly has a certain mannerism that is unique only to Phil Collins' songs, but they absolutely ramp up the feelings and emotion in the movies and sort of distinguish it from other Disney films because it has its unique sound. Sure, none of the other characters are singing, but that elevates every time Phil Collins comes on with his really powerful vocals and the way he uses his drums and instruments and everything. Two Worlds, Son of Man, Strangers Like Me, they're all incredible songs that I used to listen onto my CD over and over again. I also, as I said, I have a soft spot for villains. I really enjoy Clayton's villainy because he doesn't really start off as a villain, just as a bit of a bore, but by the end of the movie, he's certainly gone the way of the Disney villain. We have a very violent ending as well, probably one of the more violent of Disney movies, a very haunting image for children. I know it kept me up one night. There was definitely one night I had a nightmare after watching Tarzan, I think. I really love Tarzan. I love Phil Collins' work. I love the story, Clayton, the koalas, the animation. The koalas? I mean the gorillas. My sick head is getting to me, but we're going to power on. Let's just finish that off by saying Tarzan, great. Number 5. As I struggle to breathe, we move on to number 4. This is the one that's going to make most people mad, and one specific listener very happy with me. Number 4 is Atlantis, the Lost Empire. Now, looking into the history of Disney, there seems to be a consensus that after 2000, when Disney was trying to do movies that weren't necessarily musicals, where you got Emperor's New Groove, Lilo and Stitch, or Atlantis, the Lost Empire, people seem to go, all right, well, because of that, they're inferior. They don't sing, so they're not as good. Disagree wholeheartedly. Atlantis, the Lost Empire is a solid, fantastic adventure movie in the style of Indiana Jones or The Mummy, something like that, a quest. Because of this, it's the quest for the lost city of Atlantis. We follow Milo Thatcher, voiced by the lovely Michael J. Fox, who thinks he's discovered where Atlantis is. So he goes out with a crew of misfits, rogues, scoundrels, oddballs to go find the lost city of Atlantis. For about half the movie, which is my favorite part of the movie, it's them on this journey. They're in submarines, they're going through the Earth's core, they're going up against monsters, creatures of the deep, robots designed to protect Atlantis, and people are dying. There's some of the more violent deaths in a Disney film for characters that aren't villains. And it's going on this quest where Milo starts to form the relationship with his fellow travelers. And they're all unique, they're all different, but they're all very funny as well. And the relationship and bond that he forms with them is my favorite part of the movie. They become a real motley crew, which I love. I love adventure movies with a crew. When, of course, for the second half of the movie, they find Atlantis, this is where the animation really kicks off. They really brighten the colors The way the magic of Atlantis, the electricity really shows off on the temples, on the water, is just wonderful to look at. And then, of course, once you get to Atlantis, there's a secret plot going on. Some people can be trusted, some can't be trusted. Atlantis is threatened. And it's up to Milo to save the day. Now, yes, there's not a single song in this movie. But you know what is in this movie? Entertainment. A great adventure story. There's so many good characters here I could name. You've got Vinny the explosive expert who made a bridge in 10 seconds. You've got the mole and his weird collection of dirt. You've got Cookie, who has the basic food groups of beans, bacon, whiskey, and the other thing, which I can't remember because my head's going to explode. And Milo himself, who is completely embodied by Michael J. Fox. He brings so much Marty McFly to the role. Now, I would like to say that I don't think Disney has a classification. I do not think that all Disney movies are the same, and I don't think they should be the same, which is if you get to a movie like Atlantis the Lost Empire, and you're used to Disney films with musicals and romance and song, and this movie doesn't appeal to you, I would just implore you to look at it for what it is. Take the Disney glasses off, or at least change your Disney glasses, and recognize that this is a solid movie. It's so entertaining, it's so well thought out, it's got a beginning, a middle, and an end. It all flows great. All characters reach their emotional arcs in an acceptable and expected way, and then it has a satisfactory conclusion. We may not have had a song and dance, we may not have had a romantic ballad, but we've had a generally good movie. And I think for Disney to really prove what it can do, it needs to do things that are different, which I believe is what they're trying to do with later movies today. But there's a difference between buying Star Wars and Marvel and just releasing them as they are, than taking your own product and going, let's do something different with it. I think Atlantis was one of the first ones to go, let's do something different. Might not have been as successful as I hope it to be, but for me, it was very successful. So it's number 4. Coming in at number 3, back to the 90s, and boy, you knew this would be on this list. No one who makes a top Disney list should not have this on their list. Number 3 is The Lion King. Boy, we all love The Lion King, don't we? Boy, we get emotional at the sad bit in the movie. If you aren't familiar with The Lion King, what? Let me give you a brief recap. It rules. No. The Lion King stars Simba, who's a little cub in the Pride Rock, where the lions rule the lands, everything the light touches. Mufasa is his father, and one day Simba's going to inherit the throne. But his evil uncle Scar wants to be king, and through a series of events, ruins Simba's life completely and horribly, and Simba has to go on the run. While Scar takes over, Simba has to come back, has to grow and learn and become the king he was meant to be, so he can come and overthrow Scar and reclaim his place as king of the Pride Lands. It's essentially Hamlet, but with lions. It is so good, right? It's such a great story with great characters and a great visual sense to it. Simba's journey from little cub to eventual king is realized so exceptionally. He's voiced perfectly by Matthew Broderick and Jonathan Taylor Thomas when he is young. The characters around him are all unique and memorable. There's not a single character in this movie which you forget about, whether it's Timon the Meerkat and Pumbaa the Warthog by Nathan Lane and Ernie Sambella, Rafiki, the hyenas, Zazu Mr. Bean, Rowan Atkinson, Nala, Sarabi, and of course Mufasa, voiced by James L. Jones, bringing the most James L. Jones voice to his character, booming, wonderful, powerful king, and his sly, sneaky brother Scar, played deliciously evil by Jeremy Irons. It's just so good. One of the times where it takes advantage of the animation of the land, essentially Africa, that opening shot of the sunrise, the song kicking in, looks spectacular. All the songs in here are completely memorable. Everybody who probably hears it probably knows all the words because it just sticks in your head completely. A fun little side fact, but not something that's really relevant to analyzing the Lion King movie itself, though, is that Lion King is one of the few movies where the direct-to-video sequels are almost as good. Lion King 2 is a great follow-up, and Lion King 3 or 1.5 is a fun side adventure with Timon and Pumbaa. Lion King World is just such a lush, wonderful place to revisit over and over again. For the live action remake, I will say I enjoyed it. People were upset that the lions couldn't emote, but if you're going for a live action movie, guess what? In real life, the lions don't smile and dance. You just have to be aware of what it is you're watching. If you don't want that, that's fine, because we have the original Lion King. But don't go to the new Lion King, and just if you want to watch the original one, just watch the original one instead. That's all you have to do. Shockingly, the Lion King is not number 1. It's fought for the spot. It's as high on the list as I think it could be. What's coming up next for number 2 is going to enrage a lot of Lion King enthusiasts, and I'm sorry, but it's my list. So strap in. The Lion King is number 3, and number 2 is Treasure Planet. Treasure Planet, that's right. I know a bunch of Disney listeners out there who've got a list of Disney films in front of them waiting for me to say a film, probably hadn't even considered Treasure Planet. They've probably even forgotten about Treasure Planet. And that's unfortunate. Treasure Planet is a fantastic reimagining of Treasure Island, but in space. So to recap it, essentially, if you're not familiar with Treasure Planet or Treasure Island, basically Jim Hawkins finds a map to the lost Treasure Planet where Captain Flint, the most notorious pirate ever, hid all his gold. So he gets together on a ship and a crew, and he goes off to find the treasure, makes friends with a man called Long John Silver. Surprise! Long John Silver is a pirate, and pirate escapades abound. The fun spin on it being that Treasure Planet is a space adventure, so it's operating in a world where planets are the islands as they were, and the ships in space are still spaceships and still sailing ships. It's a combination of the two. There's nothing more intriguing or exciting to me than watching a sailing ship in space, where you can stand on the deck and just look out into the sea of stars. And also horrifying in that if you fall over the side, you will just fall to oblivion. As I said, what I really love about Disney is its animation, and this is where it is leaps and bounds in spades, in everything about how beautiful it looks and how the world around them is realized. The spaceport itself, where they start off with, is just a crescent moon, and you zoom in on the moon, and as the moon tilts, you can see everybody bustling about, and it looks great. I relate so much to Jim Hawkins, our main protagonist. He just wants to make a difference in the world. He feels lost, alone, driftless, and getting this map is something where he can achieve something, take hold of his life, which is great. Our side characters in here are as funny as ever. If you're a Frasier fan, Niles is in here, David Hyde Pierce. He voices Dr. Dobler, who is my favorite character in here by far. Our captain is voiced by Emma Thompson in A Glorious Twist, and she's a fantastic captain. Long John Silver is delightfully lovely when he needs to be and delightfully evil when he needs to be, and his relationship with Jim is such a firm part. In fact, it's probably the heart and soul of this movie. Again, Treasure Planet doesn't have songs, but that should not be held against it by any means necessary. There's a great, as I said, I love adventure films, and this is a great adventure film, greater even than Atlantis: The Lost Empire. It's very exciting action. There's some haunting deaths in here. There was one death that scarred me for quite some time, involving a black hole of all things. Very crazy stuff. Treasure Planet is so rewatchable for me. Treasure Planet does have one song, I should say, going back to where I say have no songs. It has one song, and it's one of my most favorite songs of all time. So definitely give it a watch and a listen out for that song. I can rewatch Treasure Planet over and over again. I think it's great. I implore all people who claim to be true Disney fans, really give this one a go, because it's deserving of its title that's on my list here. And I think it should be remembered because it stands out from a lot of the other Disney films that I have cast aside for Treasure Planet number 2. Before we get to our number 1 pick, let's just do our honorable mentions as per normal. And normally I give too many honorable mentions. I try to limit it to 11, but this was the first one where even limiting it to 11 was really hard because there are a lot of fantastic Disney films. But I'm going to list 11 for you now. And I know some people will even be waiting for films that aren't even going to be in the honorable mention list. And I'm sorry about that. I truly am. But I feel like these films are great. And if you disagree, that's cool. You can have your own top 10 list and let me know. Here are honorable mentions. The Lady and the Tramp. I love the romance between Lady and Tramp, but also because my dog is the same breed as Lady, so that resonates for me. 101 Dalmatians. I love dogs. This crime caper with Cruella de Vil stealing all the Dalmatians and the animals working together to rescue them. Great stuff. Oliver and Company. More animals. Aren't animals cute? Oliver, the little cute cat, teaming up with Billy Joel's dog crew. Great. The Little Mermaid. Again, as I wasn't allowed to watch a lot of princess films as a kid, The Little Mermaid was a late addition for me, but I love The Little Mermaid. I think she's lovely. I think Sebastian under the sea, the crab itself, great character. Pocahontas, divisive for a lot of people I know. I enjoy Pocahontas. I think it's a fun adventure. The racism stuff, it's not treated as great as it probably could be. But there's also some fun songs in here, some fun symbolism, and it holds true for me. Not enough to be on number 10, but enough for an honourable mention. Brother Bear, Phil Collins comes in swinging again for this lovely tale about a man that's turned into a bear and has to hang out with a cub that's very annoying. The animation in here is probably top-notch, the best visually in terms of working with the scenery around it, apart from The Lion King. The Princess and the Frog, one of the last, probably the last, standard animation Disney before it switched to 3D animation stuff. The twist on the Princess and the Frog story set in New Orleans is great. Wreck-It Ralph. I love Ralph, and his quest to not be considered a villain, living in the video game world with all the video game references is just great. Zootopia, a fun spin idea on animals living together in a metropolis, and predator and prey, and the combination of Judy Hopps and Nick Wilde is great. Moana. She's so lovely, and her adventure with Maui, voiced by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, is great, and all the songs about overcoming all the odds and being strong, and the visual animation, great. And finally, in a move to anger a lot of people, I pick Frozen 2 for my honorable mentions, not Frozen 1, because I love Frozen 2 more than Frozen 1, and as it was on the top 10 movies of last year, it still rings true for how much I love it, how much it's entertaining, songs, visual, story, everything's great. And the fact that Frozen 2 is only on my honorable mentions when it was a top 10 movie from last year just shows how much I hold the Disney classics, these animations, in high regard. So what's number 1, you ask? It's either really obvious or it's not. Those are our options. But let's not waste enough time. Number 1, Mulan. Mulan will always be my number 1, no matter what underneath swaps in its ranking for my top 10. Mulan just takes hold of number 1, and no one can shake it off. If you're unfamiliar with the plot, Mulan follows Fa Mulan, who is the daughter in this Chinese family. There's a war breaking out with the Huns. Her father is supposed to be recruited into the army, conscripted, but he's too old, so if he goes, he will die. So she risks everything, dresses up, pretends to be a man, and enlists in the army to fight in his stead. Mulan has the greatest Disney song of all time, I'll Make a Man Out of You. It is powerful, it's fun to sing along, it is great with the shot of everybody learning to train, Mulan becoming a better warrior, the soldiers learning to work together as a team and not be antagonistic toward each other. Absolutely great. Mulan is a fantastic protagonist. I love watching her overcome the odds, proving to people that just because she is a woman, she does not need to find a man and be married. She can be whoever she wants to be, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. And of course, Mushu, her mentor dragon, who's not really her mentor dragon, he's just weaseled his way in there, voiced by Eddie Murphy, is our true comedy king of this film. Eddie Murphy, as I praised a couple weeks ago, brings his absolute comic timing to this character, and he's great to watch. Even when he's being a little bit of a dick, he's still great to watch. Mulan is empowering, it is uplifting, it makes you think you can do anything, it looks great, the animation is spectacular. Mulan becoming friends with the men who didn't like her in the beginning and then stand by her even when they find out that she's a woman, absolute great stuff. The Emperor, voiced by Mr. Miyagi, Pat Morita, is a bit of a cheeky jokester. I love him in it. And overall, Mulan is just the one that I will cherish forever. I watched it so much as a kid. Interestingly, I still watch it now. I am anxious and worried about the live-action remake that's coming one day, eventually, because I love Mulan so much. We'll see what happens when we watch it. I don't know. But I will rewatch Mulan over and over again. I will never not love it, and it will never not be number one. Mulan. And there we go. Thank you very much for listening. I survived. I got to the end without passing out. I hope you've enjoyed. I hope it's reminded you that Disney classics, Disney animation are great. Maybe you've heard some movies that you remember fondly and you're going to go back and watch. Maybe I've mentioned some movies you hadn't considered watching and perhaps you'll give them a try. And maybe I didn't mention any of your favorite movies and you're very upset with me. Either way, thanks for listening. And I'm both obliged, happy, or sad and apologetic that I've made you feel the ways that you feel. But it's been fun. I was looking forward to doing this list and I'm glad it's done. And it's now up there amongst all the other Spliced In Later Top 10 countdowns. Until next time, next week, tune in for my 50th episode. I'll be bringing a special episode to you, and maybe I'll do something a little extra for you YouTube listeners. Maybe. You know what they say about the best laid plans? I don't do them sometimes. But you'll just have to wait and see. I hope to see you next week. Tune in then. But, as always, you've been Spliced In Later. I love and appreciate you. Adios, muchachos. I'll catch you next time.